Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world's leading global brands. Really excited for today's show. We're going to be joined by Aysha Alawadhi, Director of Culture, Transformation and Organizational Performance at Anthem. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good.
First and foremost, talk us through the background. Because it says a lot, our backgrounds. And we got a bit of Star Trek, you got a bit of artwork. I'm loving it.
I wasn't a very cool kid growing up, and art was my outlet. So it was art and literature. I read so many books that my brother used to laugh at me. He's like, "Do you eat these things? Like, how do you get through them so fast?" Yeah. So I love all genres, but particularly horror. I think I've read every Stephen King book. Oh yeah.
I'm too scared. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a scaredy cat. I can't even watch a horror movie. I'm so boring. My wife's like, "Come on." I'm like, I don't want to. Why am I choosing to be terrified right now? Like,
It's exciting. It's exciting. And Star Trek was our love at home. I started watching it, I think, when I was like 4 with my father. Oh, right. And it's like a big deal at our house.
So I'm sure it evokes some memories and some feelings.
I actually, I moved to the United States with my husband and away from my family. So I like to keep little things that remind me of them, and, things that evoke really good emotion, because, depending on where I am mentally, it really impacts everything I do.
Yeah. Well, talk us through that. I love your story and your journey. And that's a big part of this show, is bringing the human and to behind all of the leaders, which you don't get to see a lot of times. And your story especially really stood out to me in our last conversation. So tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally, where you started to kind of where you are now, because I think it's really inspiring.
Yeah. I grew up in Dubai. I'm from Dubai. I did the typical high school, go to college, finish, not know really what I'm going to do with my life. I really wanted to be in politics, simply because I thought this is the way to make a difference in the world. And then I got home and my mom's like, "That's really great, but I'm going to help you find a job, and you need to, find a job first." And I went the traditional route, had interviews, nothing really stood out, but I didn't understand that you could be excited by work. So I was like, okay, this is normal. And then one day I somehow landed in the office of a man who would then become my CEO and now forever mentor. And he kind of looked at me, he's like, "So what do you want to do? Like, why are you here?" And I'm like, and I started giving him all the technicals, like, "No, what do you want to do? Like, tell me who you are." And I'm like, okay. So we started having this chat, and I was telling him about my college career, what I like to do. And he's like, what is the thing that excited you most, in college? And I told him that it was when I did this internship with a tech startup. And I was so intrigued by the fact that I knew nothing about this new technology, but it was an exciting time, and all the energy in the room was just so great, and all the learning that came from it. And he's like, "Well, I'm going to be doing this new project here, while also continuing my role at that time." He was the GM of HR for a big organization. And he said that, "Would you be interested? Or I could deploy you into one of the roles that we have. It's totally up to you." And he's like, "Just caveat, this project could fail big time." And I'm like, I kind of like that option. And so I was the second person brought on to this startup project under the watchful eye of everybody. Nobody really thought we would succeed. And we went from 2 to 2,000 people, and the organization is doing well to this day. So it was a really immersive experience, because I was a kid, right? I was like, this was like the beginning of my career.
What an amazing thing to be exposed to at such a, you take for granted all the infrastructure, the roles, or the functions, and everything that goes into a business. And you saw it piece by piece, and all of the challenges.
And I think the biggest, absolutely, you're right. I got to see things that I didn't even know existed. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest takeaway for me was the amount of trust that this leader put in me. And he would always position me he would always say, "Well, she's a rock star. She's going to figure it out." And I would be terrified, Chris. I would be like, my heart palpitating. And I'm like, "What do you mean I know how to do this? I don't." And he's like, "You'll figure it out." And he would just shut his door. And I'm like, alone with all these
such a valuable skill, though, just to go people, like, because that is the game changer because no matter what's thrown at you in your life or in that company, you're like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, he definitely, yeah. He is the man who like started me
What's
on
his
this
name?
journey.
Let's give him a shout out. What's his name? We have to give him a shout out.
His name is Suhail bin Taraf.
Amazing.
He is the man that they write leadership books about.
Love it.
Like for real. He is so cool. I can only hope to be as cool as him one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely inspires me. He continues to do so. I call him for advice. He's an unwilling mentor. I'm like, I need your help. You need to tell me what to
do. Love it.
But yeah, so he put me in very uncomfortable positions. He said, you know what? For example, one of the things that I had to do very early on in my career was he's like, well, we need to hire a C-level executive. So make it happen. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
What do I know about that?
Right. I have no idea. And this was when I was just learning about the operational functions and things like this. And I was petrified.
How old were you around this time?
I didn't.
Just out of curiosity, just to paint a picture, how old were you around this time?
Oh, like age-wise or like old in the company?
No, I mean,
God.
age-wise, just out of curiosity.
I was like 25.
Wow. And you got recruiting recruiting a senior exec role without
a senior executive in a very technical role. Like, how on earth am I going to do this? So one, I don't want to disappoint my mentor. Two, I don't want to sound like a fool on the phone with the senior executive. But yeah, he just, he would never tell me what to do. He would always tell me to go figure it out. And then he would be there to remove roadblocks. And that really kind of built in me. Like that is the way I believe leadership should be. I've seen what works and what doesn't. And it's been very interesting over my career because I've worked with multiple leaders since then. And I've seen what great leadership looks like and what it can do and the amazing negative impact that bad leadership can have. And so that is like everything that I do. I try to think about how am I impacting this situation and how am I making it better?
Yeah. What are the other attributes that you recognized in great leaders? I love that one, by the way. And I need to get better at that, of just getting out the way. Because a lot of times, or letting someone go figure it out, because that's the biggest learning moments they have, right? And then if there is a roadblock, I can help remove that. It's been really hard to let go. Especially
that's the big one.
What other things have you recognized identified in great leaders?
And again, I go back to Suhail. One of the things that was just like awe-inspiring was the fact that this man had so much power and he had such a high position in the organization, but he had no ego. None whatsoever. He had no problem walking the floors of the call center, picking up a phone call himself, sitting with the call center representative or any processor, like, explain to me the process that you're working on. And he really, he did that. And he also, by doing that, showcased what is permissible in this organization, right? Not just the talk and the slogans on the wall, but if your CEO is not too busy for someone to walk into their door, who on earth are you, Mr. Manager, that you're so busy and you can't allow for people to come in and speak to you? I remember he did so many things that were first timers. Like he instilled a policy where when you walked into the meeting room, everyone had to dump their cell phone in the cell phone bin, and he would be the first guy to do it. He takes out his phones and throws it in there. So how busy are you? Well, what is your phone call? Like, you know what I mean? So I think what I took away from that was that ego, there's no place for it.
No.
And also the more confident you are and the better you are at what you do, you have less of it because you have nothing to prove,
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I was thinking back to a leader that just played the opposite of that. And you're right, it filters the other way. So there was, our CEO was super, you wouldn't dare walk in his office because you're here and he's here. And it filtered all the way down to the directors, the managers, and then my line manager, where even my line manager would almost be like, I have to ask permission to even approach a conversation. Wow. Right? I'm not like, by the way, this is all unwritten. It just, culturally, you can feel it. Like if you had an idea, you wouldn't just walk in your manager's office and go, got this great idea, right? Which should be normal, right? And then it was even almost a crazy idea to go and talk to the CEO. Like you like, what do you mean you went? And I did that one time because I was tired of hearing just knows or just not getting a reply. And I was like, it was actually when we was doing taking manual payments like credit cards over the phone in sales. I was like, there's a thing called e-commerce, guys. Like there's this thing, this is like 9 years ago. And I was like, there's a thing where you can like online payment gateways, and we've got a team upstairs of 20 people manually chasing invoices. Like that's a job. That's not a job anymore. Like not a team of 20. And for small, by the way, for small, imagine for every Amazon purchase, you had someone physically chase an invoice. That was the situation, right? Costing the company hundreds of thousands. I was like, I'm just going to go and talk to him. If I lose my job, I shouldn't be working here anyway, because if you can't see that this is a good idea, then I shouldn't be here. And it actually turned out that he was super receptive and was really happy, and had actually, I don't think he even realized that was the culture and perception. And then, and he was like, this is great, go and speak to, and he set me up with a team. But even when do you know the reaction I got from my manager? Never go above my head ever again.
Oh my God, I've been there.
Yeah, so
those guys are so fun, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly, right. And I'm sure people listening can and that was what I got. So I was thinking I was going to get a pat on the back, like, well done. You're going to save us all hundreds of thousands of pounds. Yeah. Sales, we can get our sales a lot quicker. No, I got pulled in a meeting.
You know what's interesting though? I mean, I'm so glad that your CEO at the time was receptive, but it behooves people in positions of management to be there with their people. They can't sit in their ivory tower and expect to know what's happening. I understand that you're busy. I understand that, but you cannot allow yourself to lose touch.
That's what happened. Yeah.
I saw that in Suhail early. I tell him, I'm like, you spoiled me, because early in my career, I saw this. I saw my leader walk down from his ivory tower and sit with his people to hear from them firsthand. And, they say culture eats strategy for lunch, right?
Oh yeah.
For breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah, we know we get it. Yeah.
But it's interesting because you see that a lot where you have these, and I've heard them, Chris. I'm an executive coach. I coach people, and I hear these stories all the time. Like when I got to the top person, it was all great, but it's all these middle people, like so this layer. And it's like, well, maybe I'm going to be a bad guy here, but I'm going to blame the guy at the top, because your job is to make sure that is not happening. And yes, you're one person. However, you can do so many things to make sure that you're listening to your people and that you're hearing their voices. Quite frankly, if you're in any kind of position of leadership and you have this belief that, a healthy culture is what it is, if you see negative behavior in a meeting or hear about it, even to get a whiff of it, you should take it so seriously, and it should be the most important thing on your to-do list, because if that rotten apple is in your company, you're gonna have problems.
It's sad to see though, because I thought that was I remember, because that was my first job, and I thought that was maybe like a one-off, like that, oh, maybe it's just this company. And my next company was exactly the same. And I remember being even in our, I was a manager, but I was always invited to the executive meetings, and when the CEO wasn't in the room, there was this, different tone. And then as soon as the CEO came in, it was completely different. And so everyone else in the business is aware of it, apart from the CEO, right? He's almost oblivious that this is a culture that's taking place. And I was a bit like, this is weird. I was still young. And I remember we had a leadership sort of retreat once a year. Like, I feel like it was kind of a glorified excuse for everyone to go on holiday together and spend the money. So Miami, of course we need to fly to Miami from London to be able to have a good offsite strategy meeting, right? And
something about the weather, make you smarter.
Exactly, right. But normally the managers don't get invited, but Steve, the CEO, invited me, and everyone was like all the other directors and VPs were like, why have you invited Chris? And because a lot of times I was always challenging them in the meetings. But why are we doing that? Yeah, but right. Why? I was always that person. I was never popular at the company at all, by the way.
Well, you don't want to be popular for being complacent, so bravo.
Yeah, but so he invited me, which made me even more unpopular, and I didn't want to go. I remember saying to my wife, I don't want to go, because I know how they are, and I'm not going for the right reasons, and I just don't want to go. I went anyway, and again, before we had the first meeting, my boss at the time was like, let me do the talking. I was like, no, why am I here? Like, I was like, I knew it, and I knew it. I was like, I I was like, I knew it. And I still got myself in trouble, and I still spoke up at the meeting. And about 3 months later, I left the business, kind of managed out. Let's just say it the politest way possible. All of a sudden, my sales target tripled. All of a sudden, I was getting brought into. Slowly, my boss was like, "You went over my head, and I'm gonna basically manage you out." And I left before he had the chance to. I was like, I can see this happening. I was like, and again, this was one of the catalysts of starting this business as well. I was like, I really don't want to be that guy. Like,
good for you. Good for you. You know, it's interesting there. I was going to say there are these kind of like legal ways to squeeze good talent out of the organization, and it's so unnecessary.
By the way, HR knew. By the way, so if all you HR people out there that let that slide, HR helped.
Shame on you.
HR helped him do that.
Yeah.
Like I was literally in a meeting. I was like, I'm not going to say the name, but I was like, you know that I'm one of the top performers in this business, but you also know he doesn't like me, and you know this is exactly what is happening, but you're not going to say anything. So I just want to point that out.
You know, and I'm glad you did. And a lot of people, like I will go on and have these seminars and speak and things, and people afterwards, HR people will be like, man, you're so hard on HR. And I'm like, yes, because I love HR and I've seen the good it can do. And when I see HR people using the tools that are supposed to help our employees, but use them in a way that will hurt them. Like if I know how to performance manage you out, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Right. Yeah. And so that stuff infuriates me.
That I get more upset about that than actually when I see that happening to other people. Obviously I've been through it now, but when I see people that are good people that are great at a job, that just because their manager, there's like a clash of personalities or something like that. And, even that CEO years later, or that manager years later actually apologized to me. Right. I bumped into him at a party, and it was like pettiness of it. He probably stayed with him as well, that he knew he was petty. He knew that it was not the real, reason why I left. And he actually contacted me asking me for help. I was like, but I didn't. I could have been a real, dick about it. I can swear on a podcast, but I wasn't. I was like, fair play.
And you know what? The thing is, you start to like, now I'm much older. I'm not going to tell you how much older, but it's just, you feel like this, you're so above it. And I mean, my husband always reminds me, like when I get irritated, he's like, is this going to matter in 5 years? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, then I'll spend 5 minutes on it. People who are just like, in your way, whatever, like they're there for a reason, and it's to get you somewhere better. I truly believe that. But going back to the bad manager, it's interesting because on the one hand, I will reprimand you if you're being a jerk. I have a no jerk policy. But on the other hand, I also sometimes will blame the organization because they put people in positions where they're going to fail, meaning that the only way you can grow in organization X is by going up and becoming a people leader. Yeah. But you don't have the skill set. So why don't I make sure that I have infrastructure that is allowing for you to grow as an individual contributor? Because who's going to say no to a promotion? Who's going to say no to more money? But do they have the ability to manage personalities and people and do what we talked about in the beginning? Let go and allow and work through others.
By the way, I'm saying that, but I failed miserably when I became. So I was one of the top sales executives, and naturally one of the only ways to make extra money, or just, the traditional career ladder, I wanted to become a sales manager, right? Well, as soon as I became a manager, I was like, whoa, this is not what I thought it was. Because before I was responsible for Chris's contribution. Now I'm responsible for all of these people. And I was like, oh, wow.
It's a different kind of job.
I'm no longer, exactly, my KPI has changed, and my objectives. And unfortunately, I had no sales training. I mean, no training whatsoever. The company just expected you just to do well. And I did a terrible job, I would say, for the first year.
Chris, but it's one of those things too, where I'm talking about the collective we've made it almost taboo to not want to be a people manager. Like, how do you not know how to do that? I actually really respect people that I'm like, I'm an SME. I'm really good at what I do. I don't want to manage people. And we should allow for that to be normalized. And we should allow for that to be something where you can actually grow in your career.
Yeah.
And
I've
it
seen
shouldn't be
companies
any
do that
more or
now. Like
less.
so many companies now creating those, specialist roles that they can grow in.
Mhm.
But in the past, the compensation, it wasn't designed that way, right? So some of
Correct.
the individual contributors for some of the big tech companies I speak to are on quadruple the amount of some of these managers, because their individual contribution to that business is recognized as they're a specialist, right? In what they do. Think about some of the top coders and developers at the biggest brands in the world, right? They don't want to
Yeah.
work. They just want to be left alone to do their magic, right?
As they should be.
As they should be, right? And also then create a system that knowledge can be transferred throughout the
Yes.
organization.
How do you codify that knowledge so it's about process? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we had a guy in our team called Cameron. Cameron's been mentioned a lot on this podcast. If you ever listen, Cameron. And again, he was one of our top salespeople. And for years, they were like, be a manager, be a manager, be a manager, like almost forcing it because he was so good at sales. He was like, I don't want to. But he stayed on a small salary the entire 10 years I was there because he wouldn't do it. And it was like the most craziest thing where this guy's making millions of pounds, but he's basically seen, and his job title never changed either. So he was doing 10x, no exaggeration, the revenue of the next person but he had the same delegate sales executive job title, the same salary remuneration because he didn't go up the ladder. And that used to bug me all the time. I'd be like, that doesn't make no sense. This guy's like,
no.
Yeah. So
because he didn't go up your broken ladder and couldn't fit into your boxes that you created. That is absolute rubbish.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this, which I know is a big passion of yours, is all of these decisions and everything we just discussed shapes culture. And a big conversation, obviously, was talking about, and I know you love, is where does culture live in an organization? It sits with HR, but for many of us believe that it's it belongs to the business, to everyone in the organization, and not just a HR function. So I'd love to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah, look, I think creating an intentional culture is absolutely important, right? Because culture happens whether you like it or not. You can't say, well, we haven't done any culture exercises, so we don't really know what our culture. Yes, you do. Whether you like it or not, it's there. So first of all, as an organization, I've been asked numerous times, like, what is the correct way? I'm like, well, there is no one way. You can't copy paste it. You first have to figure out, what are you trying to achieve, right? And then once you have that clarified, you then need to go in and look at, where are we in terms of our culture? And I'm not just talking about the espoused one that we say, well, we're a bunch of people. No, what is the real, what is the lived culture, and what are the artifacts that you have in terms of true behaviors that people show? And then once you figure that out where you are, you need to figure out, okay, so what are the gaps, and how do we actually get there? Then you make infrastructure, right, that allows for people to get there. And you have to make sure that you're bringing everyone along with you, constantly messaging that this is not about HR. This is not about, the culture project. Each and every single person is responsible and is actually affecting culture every day. So how do we do it together? That message of togetherness has to be there. And then you have to also not assume that people are going to fully understand what's baking in your head. So you got to show them, what are the behaviors that you have to showcase? What are the pitfalls that you have to look out for, right? Here are some of the barriers that we've identified. And also, I would say that you need to engage their voices before you come up with a plan. And make sure that you got to make sure that their voices are 80% of your plan, right? Not just say, we're HR, we're the smartest people in the room, and
we're HR, and here are our values.
Yes. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's the worst one.
Oh my God, that stuff drives me nuts.
I know. I've been in companies. We're still going on the conversation with our team about the values and stuff. And me and Shane sitting there coming up with what we thought the most important ones were. Sat down with a team, wrong.
Yeah.
Completely wrong. Yeah, we were roughly, but if we would have just came with what we did, it would have massively undone a lot of the work that we did by just doing that.
Even let's say you have the smartest group of people, right? And they are 99.9% correct. Still, the level of engagement, buy-in, and the way that people feel about it is going to be like, wow, you're forcing this on me. So sure, whatever, I'll do it if I have to.
Another policy.
There you go. Stop making your people do homework. It is so frustrating.
Yeah, because they want to feel part of it, right? They want to be part of the process, and that I'm heard, my voice is heard. This is the role I play, you know. And then they're going to be running behind it. You're going to have those champions. They're going to be really excited. Oh my God, they listen.
And you know what, dude? I've been in this game for a second, and I have never met. You know that guy that they talk about? The one who comes to work in the morning and says, today I want to do the worst job ever. Have you ever met that guy? Yeah. I haven't.
No.
Nobody comes to work wanting to do a bad job. Nobody wants to. But
we design all of the systems and policies for that, for the fear of that guy.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
They may turn up one day.
Why don't we treat our people like the adults that they are, and believe that they know what they're talking about, and invite their voices and an action on their voices rather than what we think is correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. We feel like we're punishing the many for the, what's that saying? We're sort of punishing the many for the fear of one person doing it. It might be
an English saying, so I don't know.
Yeah, something along those lines of like, we always do that, right? We look at it from the negative perspective of what if it's going to happen. It's like, people, I think if the last 2 years hasn't proven to organizations that our people can work without being seen and some managers staring at them going, are you doing the work? Are you doing the work? If you haven't been convinced over the last 2 years, then you're a lost cause at this point.
You're a dinosaur and you're not going to be around for long.
No, exactly. You won't have a business.
But it's human nature that we have to accept. Like, behavioral economics will tell us that people are more motivated by the fear of loss than what they could potentially gain. Yeah. Right. And so how do you take that knowledge and constantly, so, I mean, again, early on in my career, I was thrown into a lot of change management projects, and I didn't understand, like, we have this great strategy. Everyone told us what they needed, but they're not doing it. And I realized that's because you have to repeat it and repeat it again and again and again and again, just like advertising, right? And so if you're not constantly taking that and messaging,
live it, right?
There you go. You have to showcase it in like walk the talk type of thing. You have to also showcase it in how you're incentivizing and all of the structure. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a quick example. A while back, I was consulting on a project, and to just put it in, to make the story short for the podcast, our people were not performing at their best and our customers were not happy. And of course, everybody was like, well, they probably they need some more training. And, when I did a diagnostic, I realized that it wasn't the fact that they didn't know what they were doing. It was the fact that the way that I was giving you your bonus was actually purposefully making you shortchange my customer. Because the longer you were on the call with my customer,
no way,
the less bonus you'd get. So why don't I actually change, instead of trying to force it, change it to, if my customer's happy, you get a bonus no matter how long you're on the phone with them. And so the minute that changed, our customer satisfaction scores went up, our attrition levels went down, our internal employee surveys, their engagement levels went up. Like, sometimes you have to just think about the boxes that you're trying to force people into. They don't need to be the way they are all the time.
It made me laugh that you said it, because I got a customer service call the other day and I could tell they were trying to get me off the phone to get to the next call. So they were probably incentivized by the number of customers they speak to per day. It was probably, they might unfortunately have that same thing, because if I can help you with, yeah, right, bye. I was like, whoa.
Bye, see you later.
Yeah, I was like, okay, bye. Like, yeah, but again, it's such a small shift, right? Didn't cost much, I'm sure. Nope. To make that change. It wasn't a huge groundbreaking, innovation. I will tell you,
we saw an increase, 30% reduced attrition in 3 months.
And you can measure that to every cent, I'm sure,
Absolutely. And that goes into like the culture, right? So for example, with managers, you have KPIs for them, you have your leadership scorecards. Where is the culture element? Where's the behavior? Mm-hmm. Where's your no jerk policy, basically, right?
Yeah. And again, it's like those companies that I mentioned in the past, there was like, you can be the best, if you're the best salesperson and you're bringing the most revenue, they let anything fly. Turning up late, shouting at people,
I don't believe that. There's no such thing as necessary evil for me.
All of the above. And it's like, well, we can't fire them because they make X amount. And then the entire rest of the floor, I remember, actually, there's someone I've been thinking about, we were all so demotivated because it's like, wait a minute. So it's one rule for if then one rule for us, right? Just because of that, and it just set the culture. That literally set the expectation immediately across the organization that I can be a jerk as long as I bring in money.
Well, imagine if the efforts were put into all of the other 90% of people rather than that one. Could you imagine? So they're looking at the revenue this person's making, but what is the potential right here? And what are you losing?
Yeah.
And it is, I get so mad at HR again, because I love them. I love HR, and I am like, you can do better. You should do better.
And again, you're right. They know this. They're not oblivious. I've even had jokes with the HR directors in these businesses about, oh, so-and-so and so-and-so did this, ha, 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 ha. But deep down, I'm like, wow. Like, like, I'm like, okay. But the worst part, I think, is after a while, you come acclimatized to it. I was, and you just
dangerous,
very dangerous, right? And then you're just like, and then you're right. I then suffered from a manager trying to motivate my team, and they're like, yeah, but so-and-so's doing that. So Chris, you're trying to tell me this, but you're not even, but the other managers aren't even doing that with their teams. So how can you say we need to lead in X, Y, and Z when this behavior is being, and I'm like, well, that's not my team. But they're like, well, that's not the point. And they're right. And I know they're right. So I can't even I was like, oh, like you are right, but I can't do anything about that person because that's them. It leaves you in a really vulnerable position as a manager sometimes when those things are happening and you feel helpless. So even though I know my team's right and I need to support them and I need to do these things, I think the one decision I made, which was one of the toughest, is it got so bad that I actually said to the CEO, I want to move my entire sales team off this floor. What do you mean? That's the sales floor. I don't care. You got we have a spare room on the roof that no one uses. Can we just go there?
That is so horrible.
Like, what do you mean? I was like, I just don't. And I even built a little temporary wall down the side of on the main floor. We were around this like cove. And again, it seems dramatic saying it out loud, but it was over a period of time where I was like, I just don't want to be associated with that. And we went upstairs and we had our own little, our own little space, and we even had like a table tennis table and stuff like that, and made it really fun. I'm not trying to be some Google or anything, but like if we were smashing sales target and the team wanted to take 10-15 minutes to have a game of table tennis, that's fine. Downstairs it would be like, get the hell on the phone, and it would be like, and
that is not the way to motivate.
I know.
People,
and people were like, can we come work upstairs with you guys? They would sneak upstairs to have a little game with us and like be part of our team. And they're like, oh, what's that on the wall? Oh, that's our vision board. Because that's what all of our team want to achieve. They're like, what do you mean a vision board? I was like, well, that's what motivates AJ. That's what motivates Shane. That's what Dan's looking to get his deposit for his house. And it's like, they're like, there's two different worlds basically between there. This is over years, by the way. I didn't get this right immediately. I was just like, how do I not want to be how was I managed, and how I don't want to do that. That was my book. My book was basically, let me list all the things I hated when I was on the other end and just try and do something. And I found the book was like, what was it, like the 1 Minute Manager? It was so long ago, I can't even remember, the first one I ever picked up. And that book was so simple and helped me just foundation, like just a basic of just getting through, and just saying, how are you today? What does motivate you? Just a simple question. Right. This. Yeah. No, forget about the money. What does that money go towards? Because it was always around like, how much do you want to make? 10,000, 2,000. No, but for what?
Right.
Because I want to help my mum get out of debt. Oh, wow. Amazing. Let's have a conversation around that. Let's break that down. Right. And then I was like, oh, this is what managing means, not whipping people and,
And it's funny, you get so much more out of people. Like I will tell you, I love, and I know it's going to sound crazy, so I will sometimes be working on something and then feel the need to go and intensely run on my treadmill. And those, like, even if it's just, I swear to God,
to get it out,
and I'm just getting all of this out, and then I can do work that is far better than I could have if you had trapped me on my desk, right? Yeah. And it's like, how do you take the time to hear people, understand what motivates them, as you say, like what is their why, and then work to help propel rather than kind of like trap them in this what you think is going to work for them.
Yeah, because I didn't have to guess anymore. What ask? One of the things I was always afraid to ask. I think a lot of managers are afraid to ask because they're worried about the answer. It's even when we talk about well-being, for example, we're so afraid to open up that conversation because we're like, well, you don't have to have all the answers. That's what I realized early on. Is I felt like as a manager and a leader, I have to be able to solve everything, and therefore I didn't ask questions where I was like, really? That's what motivates you? Because sometimes it was something so small that we could achieve.
Yeah.
I remember one guy, he said, I've never had a nice belt. I know. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I just never had he had this really cheap belt with like holes, like the leather was like kind of old and like ripped a little bit. And he didn't make much at the time. He wasn't doing great. So I just love a nice belt. Like I didn't even remotely think that was something. And he wanted a nice belt. He wanted a Hugo Boss belt. I remember that was on the vision board. And again, to everyone else, it may have been trivial, but for him to walk to work and have this nice Hugo Boss belt on, I was like, fine, that's what we're going to work towards. How are we going to get that together, right? Like, and I would never have thought of that like as a thing. And I'm laughing about it now because I remember him telling me, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And some other people, it was aspirational. Like I want, to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30, and this is how I'm going to achieve it, like whatever it was. Anyways, before I let you go, I'm conscious of time. We have a quick fire round that I ask every single guest, right? So I'm going to ask you some questions. You've got 30 seconds to get per answer. Are you ready?
Sure.
What are your passions and hobbies outside of the organization?
I love working out with my kids. We have workout days together, family workout days. That's like my favorite thing to do.
Wow. Family workout days. That's amazing. If you could change one thing about HR, what would it be? If you could kick your fingers right now and just change one thing, what would it be?
Take the egos out of the room.
Love that. How would your family and your family, friends, kids describe what you do for a living? How would they describe what mum does?
Confusing.
Like, she just talks all day. She's just on the calls all day as well. What legacy do you want to leave for your kids?
Yeah. I think about that all the time. And I want them to know that whatever mom did, she did it and made things better in the tiniest way. Even if I could just leave this call and make you smile, I achieved it.
Yeah. Have you ever considered leaving HR? If so, never. Okay, there you go. That was a pretty concise answer as well. Who's a person in your life that's had the biggest impact on you?
My father.
And why?
My father came from my father was a sheep herder and went to USC, became a petroleum engineer, traveled the world. Yeah. Wow. He instilled a lot.
Yeah, amazing. And the last question, what advice would you give to those HR leaders of tomorrow, that next generation that will be sitting in your seat one day?
Be vulnerable, be okay with that, and be okay with not knowing everything. It's okay to ask, and it's okay to make mistakes. And in fact, you should be happy because it means that you're learning.
Love that. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I feel like we need part two. I didn't even get to half the questions that we had planned because it was so fun. We were just kind of on a roll as well. But I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely need to connect soon as well. And apart from that, I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thank you. I'm glad you're better. And yeah, I hope to talk soon. I'll see you later.
Bye.